Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Gadi Shamia. Gadi is the CEO and co-founder of Replicant, a conversational AI platform on the belief that machines are ready to have useful, complex conversations that will transform the way they interact with the world. Prior to Replicant, Gadi helped take Talkdesk, a $10 billion contact center software market leader, from a seed stage company to a unicorn startup as its COO, and played a key role in architecting and executing its 20x growth in people and revenue. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Gadi. Welcome, Gadi.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, could you share with us, our listeners, a little bit about your journey? Even though we read a bio of our guests, we always like to give them an opportunity to share just a little bit about how they got to where they are today in your own words.
And I like this question because it gives me an opportunity to share with people that a lot of one's journey is luck and maybe early smart decisions, but some of them have, in some cases, there's no way to predict how one decision will lead to the next opportunity. I got into tech as an accident, actually. I studied accounting and economics. The tech industry at the time in the 90s was not really evolved. Actually, even studying computer science was one of the easiest degrees to get to. And accounting, economics, management type of degrees were really hard to get to at the time, really a reverse from what it is today. And I got into tech because my university was on a strike because our tuition was increased. So all the students went on almost a semester-long strike, and back in Tel Aviv. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, you seem bored. Somebody's looking for a quality assurance person in a tech company." I said, "I don't know what quality assurance is. Don't know exactly what tech is, but let me give it a try." And I jumped in, I really liked it, and they really liked me. And my journey in technology really started because I was bored during a strike in university. I could have been an accountant by now. Mm-hmm. And from there, one thing led to the other. Joining this tech company was great. It later on split into two. I stayed with one of the two sides as a co-founder and built an ERP and accounting software that is still used today. It's called SAP Business One. It was acquired by SAP back in 2002. I had a chance, because of this acquisition, to spend 6 years as a senior executive at SAP. And really one thing led to the other in a way that eventually led me to what I do today. So some luck, some hard choices, some easy choices, and you can find yourself in a great career.
All right, sounds amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, you have a lot of experience working with AI, and of course, there's a growing demand for it globally. Can you share with us a little bit about how organizations are using AI to enhance customer experience, and have you seen that change more drastically, especially in the last 2 to 3 years?
Yes, so we're actually at the very beginning of wider adoption of AI in organizations. AI has been here as an option for several years, but we're just seeing it become more mainstream because in any area, any new technology, the first generation tend to not be great. If you compare Google Maps to some of the older versions of navigation software, in almost all cases, the first generation paved the way to better products that are using more advanced technology and some of the learnings of the previous generation. So I think we're in the first the first era of wide adoption of AI because it finally works. And we see AI used across multiple use cases. I think the first adoption of AI was actually for quality assurance and call analytics. Traditionally, in contact centers, calls were this black box, and you record them for quality assurance and training purposes. but really no one ever listens to them because the time it takes to listen to a full call, the time that the call takes. So it's pretty hard to listen to calls, especially en masse. So what we see is more and more companies were adopting call analytics as a way to listen, quote unquote, to many calls at the same time and derive insights, but also training materials back to the agents. And this is really helpful because it allows us to train agents and help them learn faster. But it actually doesn't solve the fundamental issue we see today in the customer service space, which is lack of agents. So it's great that we can train agents better, but over the last couple of years, we've seen a problem that used to be pretty bad becoming almost catastrophical. Agent availability was always an issue in the contact center space, and the pandemic made it much worse. We all heard about the Great Resignation, where more and more people choose not to participate in this type of job that tend to be entry-level, mundane, and repetitive. So the available pool of agents decreased quite dramatically. And then add the disruptions that the pandemic added with childcare, with people becoming sick themselves, people caring for maybe older parents, and agent availability dropped even further. So if you talk with customers today, the issue is not, the question they're asking is not how we train agents, is how we hire more agents, if it's even possible, and then can we train them and onboard them faster? But more importantly, can we start using AI to automate some of the most mundane and repetitive work of those agents so we can free up those agents to do more meaningful work? And the reason I'm so excited about this change is that it's a triple win to everyone. If you can take away from the agents the most menial, repetitive tasks, their work is going to be more rewarding. Companies are going to be inclined to pay them more. They're more likely to stay longer in their jobs, and customers are less likely to wait, hours to speak with an agent. So it's a pretty interesting intersection where AI can really create a relief for the first time in a meaningful way.
All right. Now, could you also share with us how the intelligent voice automation is helping to improve business outcomes for companies who don't have enough manpower to keep up with demand?
So this is the core of what Replicant does, and we have many examples of how what the impact of that, and I'll give you a couple of examples. As I said, we hear constantly from our customers that hiring became their biggest challenge, and we hear quotes like, I now try hiring 9 people for every 5 roles because I know that in the first 2 months, 4 will leave. So you have to hire more people for the same exact number of openings. People stay for a shorter period of time. It used to be a year to year and a half. Now agents will call it quits after 6-7 months. So that's an ongoing problem. And a couple of interesting examples. One of them is was one of our customers, ECSI, in a financial service area. So they deal with student loans and other payments products, and their hot season is somewhere between January and tax time, which last year was May. This year, hopefully, will stay April. And in this the first 4 months of the year, they get the majority of their calls around student loans, tax forms, and so on. So every year the ritual was similar. You have to go and hire extra 20, 25, 30 agents to just help with the seasonal increase. And this is a very hard task. Everybody that hires seasonal agents knows that you hire people for a short period of time. They are less committed to the business. They come there just to plug a hole. You have to train them, but then the whole thing goes away at the end of the season, and you have to repeat the whole thing every time you have a predicted increase in call volume. So for ECSI, this is the first year when they don't have to hire seasonal agents to deal with the tax issues because they're able to automate a majority of their simple calls and repeatable calls around tax and tax forms. I didn't get the form, please say it again to me, and so on. And it's created a really interesting experience. For the callers, it used to be, this is the hot season, I have to wait more to speak with an agent just to get the form I probably lost in the mail. Now they get an answer within seconds and a solution within 2-3 minutes. For the company, they don't have to go through the rigmarole of starting somewhere in October to identify, interview agents, hire them in December, train them across the over the holidays, and make sure they're ready to take calls in January, just to let them go in April. So the win here is both on the customer side, where their calls don't have to wait on hold anymore, but also on the company side that doesn't have to go through this process, which takes a lot of time, effort, and energy from management, instead of focusing on continuous improving of customer service. So that's one example where it's really helpful. Another one which I really like is one of our customers in the roadside assistance space. They are serving large areas of Canada. Canada has a pretty hard winter this year. And literally, they told us they could not have answered all the emergency roadside service calls they got in some of the coldest days. Because as you can imagine, a cold day and people try to start their car and they can't, and they need roadside assistance. And when a day like this happens, all of a sudden, instead of getting X number of calls, say 100 calls, you get 300 calls. And it's really hard to summon up enough agents in a day like this, also because the agents might be stuck at home with a dead battery. Mm-hmm. So the ability to answer any number of calls that came their way and be able to help all their customers in the coldest, hardest days was a really big change from previous years for them, where some calls had to wait for 20, 30 minutes on hold, sometimes stuck out of the car in 5 degrees weather.
All right, that sounds really, really good. Okay, now Gadi, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
I think for everyone it'd be Google. I really forget how I look for information, and in a way, Google became this notepad that allows you to really get quick answers for questions, but then also kind of deepen your research. So I think this is one that comes to mind first. But I would say that it's so much easier to consume information today that I can't really name one tool. I think if I had to, it's Google. But I learn a lot from Twitter because of the randomness of that. I follow an interesting selection of people that cover a lot of areas of my interest, and it helps you learn from in a less structured way. In Google, you go and seek an answer to a question. And Twitter, in a way, you stumble upon topics you may have not thought of and kind of open a new way of thinking for you. So I like the randomness of Twitter, but also a huge fan of audiobooks and podcasts. And I constantly listen to at least one audiobook and maybe a couple of podcasts that I am excited about. And it's interesting if you my style of doing that. I like to walk the dog and listen to a podcast, and it helped me think freely about some other areas which may not be directly related to what I do, but can lead to interesting thoughts and solutions at work. So it's just a way to provoke thinking much more than maybe learn something new. So I use, if you look at what I use every day, is Twitter, Audible, Google, and whatever my favorite podcast platform. Currently I'm using Spotify, but it changes over time.
Gotcha. So I'm glad you mentioned Audible, because that kind of dovetails nicely into our next question. Could you share with us maybe one or two books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could be a book that you read a very long time ago or even listened to, or one that you have engaged with recently, but it has really left a big mark on you. You really loved it.
Yes, so I want to give credit to Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, which was one of the first technology books I ever read. And I'm not sure that if the impact of this book was, I think the book is amazing and impactful. I will explain why. But also it was one of the first books I read. So it may have been the transformation I went through was more impactful because it was just one of the first books, like the first call you may have had on a cell phone in the middle of the desert is always more impactful than the new version of the iPhone that just seems a little bit more of the same. But I read Crossing the Chasm when I worked on my first ever product that eventually is the one that was acquired by SAP and now turned to be SAP Business One. And we had this classic Crossing the Chasm problem. We launched this product, and the first day we launched it, it literally was on DVDs. This was mid '90s, and literally we couldn't print enough DVDs to deal with the demand we had. And 30 days later, everybody returned the product. Not everybody, but 80% of the customers used the 30 days money back guarantee and returned the product. It became much harder to sell to mainstream customers. And it took us 3 years to kind of crack the code of what a robust ERP product need to look like until we're able to get to the mainstream. And start getting wide adoption that eventually led to SAP acquiring the company and taking this product globally. And I think the reason the book was so impactful was, one, it came at exactly the right time. Where I was in a chasm with my company, unable to move from early adopters to more mainstream buyers. The second is it did provide reusable, useful tools that I use actually across my career. There's a concept of 9-point checklist of product launch that I'm still using today. Even at Replicant, one of the first exercises we've done as a leadership team is use the 9-point checklist from this book that I read in 1995 to define the target market, the focus customer, the problem we're trying to solve. So having a reusable tool in a book that you can use 25 years after you read it is just unique. There's so many books that just talk about a small specific topic, and they're really not more impactful than an article. And I think this book having this long-lasting impact on me is very unique. Now, I read hundreds of books after that. Each one of them left a small mark, but this is definitely the most impactful book I've ever read in a business sense.
All right, perfect. Okay, now Gadi, could you also share with us what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting time when it comes to people development, and it's something that I care about greatly. So as you said at the beginning, people can start calculating my age just by summing up my years of experience and work in different companies. And my perspective not shifted, but evolved to really believe that the most important thing we can do as business leaders is be accountable and responsible to help our own team develop and grow. When you work in technology, especially when you're young, it's at least my perspective was I was really cared about the product I built and technology I built. And I got a lot of satisfaction from building a product that sold a lot or customers like. I still get a lot of satisfaction from it. But when you look in retrospect, I don't miss the products I built and now owned, run by other people. I miss the people I work with, and I feel most rewarded by seeing their career. The intern that worked with me at SAP and now CEO of a company that probably going to be lasting for generations, or the product manager that I hired 20 years ago and now is a senior VP in a large public company running their entire product line. And she's now, by the way, a consultant and helping Replicant as kind of part of the Give Back program in the Silicon Valley. So if this is the most rewarding thing for me, I want to make sure we as a company continue to help our team launching their careers and make their stay at Replicant, maybe 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, a meaningful stop in their career. So a lot of what I'm focused on right now as we kick off 22 is how do we provide this type of support to our team? Being a remote company, having people in Canada, in the US, some people in Europe, how do we create a platform that allows everybody to launch and improve their career and find Replicant to be a learning and growing experience. Another area where I'm really excited about is finding ways to support people in a more personal way. Companies traditionally stayed away from anything mental health or too personal, especially in the U.S. culture. We're supposed to kind of keep things separated. You only work here. Let's don't talk about your emotions. And I think now, and maybe the pandemic helped with that, it became more normal to talk about mental health in the workplace and the impact of the pandemic and the impact of isolation and the impact of working remotely. So I'm excited to kind of tackle this relatively new problem and find ways to define a new status quo between companies and its employees about how might we support people also in their mental health journey and in their mental well-being, maybe better than mental health, but their mental well-being.
All right, sounds good. Very good. Very forward thinking as an organization, because you really have to take care of the person as a whole. All right, now our listeners would have tapped into this episode and they're quite intrigued with your journey and with Replicant, and they'd like to follow your journey online and probably even connect with you. Where can they find you online?
The easiest thing is I'm Gadi Shamia, GADI SHAMIA on Twitter. If you want to follow on LinkedIn, they invite as well, Gadi Shamia. So I guess this is the two main platform. Of course, they can check more about Replicant at replicant.ai. And I'm happy to be in touch and answer any questions.
Great. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? It kind of helps to get you back on track if for any reason you got off track or you got derailed. Do you have one of those?
I don't have a quote, but I have a story.
Okay.
I think early on, early on in my life, I served in the military, and I was in several situations that were really complicated. It's not necessarily a matter of life and death as much as they were just complicated, where it looks like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and then another time over. And the stress was real and impactful and physical. And every time I use it more. I used to remind myself the story a lot when I was younger, and now it's just the faint memory of the story is very helpful. But just remembering being stuck in the mud without being able to move in at night, far away, and not being able and having series of issues happening one after the other. And then after a couple of days of intense work, being able to get out of this mess. And I just remind myself that most of the issues I face today are not at this scale. And they're not really life and death, and they could be resolved in different ways. So when I feel like I'm overwhelmed, mainly, I remember the feeling of being overwhelmed when I was 22, much less experience with much more severe consequences of a mistake. And I just say, you know what? We can just go through it, and just having this peace of mind that will be able to navigate it, because it's not going to be as bad as that. Helped me a lot, especially early in my career.
All right. Very nice. Thank you for sharing, Gadi. Well, we just want to extend our gratitude to you again for taking time out of your very busy schedule to hop on our podcast and share a little bit about AI and, just how it's helping manage the whole customer experience. Also, how it's helping to reduce the amount of, as you said, mundane and repetitive work that a lot of agents have to do, so that their time can be attributed more to quality work or helping on more complex problems with customers. And we are excited for your journey, and I'm hoping that our listeners will definitely reach out to you and follow you and tap more into your journey. So thank you again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Just want to remind our listeners, please feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. And you can feel free to join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.